Welcome to the Clean Power Hour Live. I'm Tim Montague, your co-host. Today is the 6th of October, 2022, and we are bringing you the clean energy transition news. Clean Power Hour Live. I'm Tim Montague, your co-host. Week in and week out, solar, wind, battery storage, everything clean tech. And I want to welcome my co-host, PV Magazine journalist and commercial solar guy, John Weaver.
Timothy, I hope everything's well. Thank you for that invite or introduction. We also cover EVs. Sometimes we cover rocket ships. Occasionally we'll cover robots. Rocket ships are probably one of the more exciting things we cover.
We haven't done any Mars robots lately. I wonder what's going on with the Mars, the not the rover, but the
Helicopter.
The helicopter, yeah. I know it's nearing end of life. I don't know if it's still running or not, but it was a durable little sucker. And
Helicopter.
But yeah, I'm still, the endorphins are still pumping from RE Plus, John. Honestly, 27,000 people gathering to make deals and share knowledge and grow the industry. We need tens of thousands more people to join us. So reach out to me. You can reach me on cleanpowerhour.com. And I also do training on HeatSpring. Check out the training tab at cleanpowerhour.com to learn more about that. So John, what's your favorite news story this week? What do you want to go into?
Oh, my favorite. By the way, the last rover, the last Ingenuity flight was September 24th. It took one in August, one in June, nothing in July, 3 in September, and it hasn't taken one since September 24th. So there you go. It's and it was a shorter flight. It was 55 seconds, but all the last flights were 55 seconds. So maybe that's a thing, but shorter than prior flights, which were a couple of minutes. So there you go.
All good things must come to an end. It won't be the last helicopter on Mars. And I like to say that, Elon is doing all that he does here on Earth really just to go to Mars. So he wants to see a permanent human settlement on Mars in his lifetime. I think that's debatable, but a good aspiration.
I think he's building a cult for it.
Yes, and that's why he says we need more people on Earth. That flummoxes many of us because the Earth has now 8 billion people, and a billion of which do not have electricity and are living hand to mouth. So why do we need more? Well, I think Elon has plans to send a billion of them to Mars. And of course, a lot of the early settlers will not have a happy ending, just like they did when European settlers went to other foreign places far away on ocean-going vessels, which are now the new ocean-going vessel is the spacecraft. So we'll see. But well, let's talk about the news, John. Rivian activated a solar canopy charging yard, they call it. Rivian is the well-known SUV and electric truck maker here in Normal, Illinois, in central Illinois. They're also making delivery trucks for Amazon, and you see some in this photo, so I'll put this on screen. It's a pretty cool project. It's an 800 kW, well, 783 kW solar parking canopy. And nice story from Ryan Kennedy at PV Magazine. They're also going to install a large wind turbine, a 2.8 megawatt wind turbine, which, when you do the math on that, John, that turbine can produce, I think, 10 gigawatt hours of electricity, which is, in solar parlance, the installation would be 3,500 for a 2.8 megawatt wind turbine. So the capacity factor for a wind turbine is quite a bit more than for a solar array, but great combination. And they are planning to completely power the factory with wind and solar, which is very cool.
Always having solar on site is always nice because you're walking the walk. The solar carport is a decent sized thing. If you are doing wind and solar at a factory with EVs, that's a pretty cool selling point. The fact that you can say, hey, this EV's first charge was from a solar carport. Now, it's probably not a DC solar to the vehicle's charging infrastructure. It's probably a standard solar carport that has a grid tie, and
Right.
the vehicles are technically charging from the grid. But whatever, who cares? They're doing it. They spent a lot of money on this carport. This is not a cheap structure. I mean, you can look at it, you can see it's a solid built one. It's not one of the thin ones.
Yeah, it's a superstructure, right, where you cover the entire area with carport, and then they include a small gap there for the shading that each row creates, but good looking solar structure. And it's just cool to see all the EVs lined up there in the parking lot. I don't know what their ramp rate is right now, like how many cars a week they're producing. That's an interesting question. But
I know that number. They did like 7,500 last quarter. Rivian trucks Q3. So 7363 EV pickups and SUVs in Q3.
Yeah.
So if you think 12, 13 weeks.
Yeah. So still pretty small numbers in the greater scheme of things, but I wish them well. And I still have a deposit on a Rivian truck. I have no idea if that will ever come to see the light of day, but what else strikes you about that? I'm curious, the story mentions Forefront, which is a well-known developer on the West Coast. I assume that means that they're doing a power purchase agreement, but doesn't say. And for any of our corporate listeners, if you want to do a big solar project but don't have a big budget, third-party ownership is a great way to go. I'm in the business of offering C&I customers power purchase agreements, and projects like this are right in that sweet spot. And in Illinois, because we have generous renewable energy credits, we're breaking the 2-cent barrier on large C&I now for PPAs. Wow. So that's the power of solar programs and solar incentives. The combination of renewable energy credits and the smart inverter rebate, which are run by different organizations. The REC program is run by the Illinois Power Agency, and the smart inverter rebate is run by the Illinois Commerce Commission. But all right, well, what is next on the roster?
So I got an EV truck. I decided to put all the EV news together while you were just talking about the EV, so we can move through it fast. But I just like this new Silverado. It was just a cool truck, new EV that's coming, but I wanted to show off 2 specific images of the bed of the truck and how the bed folds into the cab via a back wall of the cab, which is, the back seats in the window, and how that folds into the cab. And I really liked the 2 images. The one in the tweet is better, but the one in the article is okay. But the size of the bed, the width of the bed, the length of the bed, the way the cab opens makes me think somebody's going to come up with a nice tent, not like those hard tops they used to put on pickups, but something that's a little more flexible and lighter and removable. And
so there you go. The bed of the truck expands into the back seat of the truck. Yeah. That's a great idea. That's very innovative.
Look how big that is. I mean, that's a 6 foot, 8 foot bed, with everything folded out with some gear on there. You could fit 2 people next to each other comfortably and sleep in that truck. Turn on the AC. That thing kind of flaps up a little, so you have like a built-in pillow, so you don't need a bunch of crap. Oh man. So that's what I saw. As soon as I saw this image, I was like, that is my camper vehicle. I want to take that out. I want to take that into the woods, sleep somewhere.
Yeah, I'm with you. Good concept for camping or carrying, big 2x10s, 6x10s, whatever, right? Lots of space for cargo. which is a good thing.
That was
Yeah.
really all I had on this. It's a Silverado, which is, a very manly truck. So it's good to see that they're coming out with EVs, and it had some good stats on it. Lots of horsepower, lots of torque, all the good fuzzy numbers, and range, of course. I think it had like a 600-mile range, giant battery.
Are they taking reservations for this?
I have no idea. I didn't pay attention. I was just looking at the pretty pictures, Tim. Come on.
I know it is eye candy for the soul for sure. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting my grubbies on my Ford Lightning. That's my top pick of the EV trucks on the market, or planned, so to speak, right? I also have a Cybertruck deposit, but not holding my breath. Tesla's busy building Model Ys.
Yep. Yep.
Can't blame them.
Yep. They're selling them. Can't stop selling them.
Can't do too many things at once. So yeah, I think we've kind of reached the tipping point for electrification of transportation, starting to go mainstream here in North America. It's already gone mainstream in Europe and China, and once again we're playing catch up. But I would say, mark my words, in 5 years, the ICE engine will start to rapidly fall by the wayside, and all your options will be pure EV for new vehicles.
So a headline that said EV demand won't be met for 4 or 5 years. And that probably means that every car manufacturer should expect to sell their EV immediately. And that should mean something to these people. If they're going to sell their car immediately upon manufacturing it for 4 to 5 years, and then really soon thereafter for the next 2 to 3 years, that's like 8 years of car sales, like, wrapped up. So, get on it. Get on it, car manufacturer people.
Should I put this?
Yeah, put the list up. This is our last EV of the article. So, you get 3 EV articles. That's our new policy, Tim. Three articles at a time. Just made it up.
So what is FOTW though? I don't understand that acronym.
FOTW.
So this is a page on the DOE's website, and giving some stats. Model year 2022 EVs achieving an EPA combined rating of 100 miles per gallon electric or equivalent, or more. And then it rates them in terms of that MPGe, Tesla Model 3 being the number 1, and 3 with the Y, and then Lucid, Chevy, Hyundai, again, Tesla. So Tesla's doing very well here. I'm curious more about quantities, but it's nice to see so many models.
Yes.
Right. And this is about a third of the models that you could get in Europe. They have like 60 EVs on the market in Europe, but this is a nice list. This is progress.
And it's good that there's so many that we're doubling and tripling and quadrupling the energy efficiency on. And, people are like, oh, we'll never be able to replace all the oil that we use. Well, yeah, first off, when you go with EV, your mileage is going to go up 3 times, 4 times, depending on what your vehicle type is. So yes, it's going to be a lot easier to replace all the oil we need with other more efficient tools. And no, the oil people, the energy people won't make as money off EVs, but now the electricity people will take that money and they'll be happy to get that $1,500, $2,000 a year per household, per vehicle. More than happy to take that. So I like seeing the efficiency number, so many of them above 100, because that's just a great number to see. I mean, even in these high electricity pricing times, my car is, cheap. Well, mine's free, but in Massachusetts, it's expensive electricity. It's still cheaper than gas. So it's good. This is the article of the week, though, right here. I like this little headline here. For the first half of 2022, according to Ember, renewables entirely met the rise in electricity demand for the year. And that's like maybe the first time it happened. I saw a few people suggest it might have occurred last year, but now I'm
Mhm.
seeing people say it now, and whatever. If it occurred last year, great. I don't think it did. I think other people said no, but uh, so great. 389 more electricity demanded, 389 terawatt hours, 416 added in renewable, and that's pretty awesome.
And
And a lot of people,
this is just in 2022.
first half of 22, yes.
Yeah. So 416 divided by 5. So renewables are eclipsing fossil generation by a factor of 83 when it comes to new assets on the grid. And this is global, I assume, huh?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And it's changed though. So it's retiring plants and newer plants a net number. So there was probably more than 5 terawatt hours added, but a lot retired too.
Right. It's let me just make sure I understand that. It's net.
Net,
It's
yeah.
the net delta in fossils. So we're still adding more fossils than we're retiring.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we still are expanding capacity a little bit of fossils.
Yeah.
China is still adding fossils. Other countries are still adding fossils. Gas, more gas is being added than coal, but we are still adding fossils. So we haven't stopped climbing up the hill of heavy fossil addiction yet in the US and globally. I mean, in the US, we're net negative every year. We are adding new fossils every year, but we're also retiring coal. And a lot of times we retire the fossils. And since like 2003, the United States is net negative for fossils in the country. And so that's a good number. But we are still adding it. Mostly we're adding gas. We're not adding any coal. And the gas is very flexible to complement solar resources. But the new fossils that are being added are running at a lower capacity factor. So while you might get the same 1 gigawatt plant, nowadays it might only run 40% of the time versus back in the day when it ran 70%. And so that's a benefit because we still need them for stability as of yet. The batteries haven't scaled yet.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're still adding CO2 to the atmosphere. That's one of the challenges. We are slowing that rate now slightly, but it's still a major concern, and why we're so glad that the Biden administration is taking it seriously and enacted the IRA and extending solar incentives, solar, wind, onshoring manufacturing, incentivizing battery production, incentivizing solar equipment production, so many good things. So at least there's a glimmer of hope, I like to say. What's next?
Well, what I think is a good story is looking at the price of electricity and what's occurring specifically, nationwide, but with this particular article, you can kind of show it off a whole bunch in an aggressive market in New England. So the price of electricity is going up for everybody right now. And we'll get into why in the next article, but this is just kind of showing in a really nice graphic what's happening to residential electricity pricing in New England. And look at that, buddy. That starts in August of 2020, those 10-cent and below generation charges.
Yeah.
And it's going up to 17 cents, and this is just the generation charge. Like I looked at an electricity bill the other day that was 32 cents per kilowatt hour for solar. And it's like, oh my gosh. And, that means the residential solar is going to pay back without any incentives in a really fast time. And one of the reasons of this story, why electricity prices are rising unevenly across New England, is that in New England, we've pushed back very aggressively against new gas pipelines from the shale deposits in Pennsylvania. And, we just don't want to build the pipelines. So the gas is expensive that we get because we have to take gas that comes from LNG terminals on the Gulf Coast. And we're paying 2 to 3 times what the rest of the nation is paying for gas. Now, the price of gas is up for the whole nation, but it's still up more in New England this winter because of what's going on in Europe. And because the Europeans are pushing gas through the roof. Now, there's a high probability this price of electricity will fall next year. Probably. We'll see. But if we look, New Hampshire had a massive, terrible increase. It's going to hurt some people.
Yeah, it's interesting how much spread there is in this, considering how tight a region the Northeast is. There's more than 2x a delta, and Rhode Island is holding steady. Here in August of 2021 at 7.8 cents. I wonder if wind energy has anything to do with that, but
not yet. None of the wind that Rhode Island has built has a contract that is up yet.
Okay. But and then we've got New Hampshire, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, all represented here. But New Hampshire is the standout for spikes. Massachusetts also seems to be pretty spiky, but
so price of electricity going up. Now, if you go to the next article, we can see one of the reasons that the price of electricity is going up is that the United States has started exporting LNG via the Gulf Coast. We started this we signed the agreement way back in 2015 as part of a trade-off to extend the investment tax credit for solar. And then the first export port was built in 17-ish. A few more were built over the last few years, and now they're just expanding. And so now the price of gas in the US is way up because we're competing with the global gas market. Here we can see what EIA has said is that the volume of LNG exported has officially exceeded gas consumed in the commercial sector. So the international market, like oil, has been always historically, is now gas as well. And that gas has an influence on the price of our electricity. So the reason our electricity is partially going up is because the price of gas is going up, because it's being exported, because we're competing with the world, and because somebody decided to start a land war in Europe. And so all these little things are mixing up. And part of, some dude also blew up a gas pipeline, 2 of them. So
I don't know if this is true, but I saw some headline that China buys liquefied natural gas from the US and is now reselling that into Europe for a profit. Is that a true story?
So China and other places have signed contracts with exporters at a certain value. And they said, we'll take it at 10, 12, 14, whatever the number is. And instead of using it, they're flipping it to the European market, which is 3, 4, 5 times more expensive. So yes, China's been buying US LNG and shipping it to Europe.
Yeah, it's capitalism at its best, I guess.
Global capitalism. They're doing their jobs.
Yeah.
Moving it around. But, good news. I saw a headline yesterday. I don't know fully what it means, but the European tanks are stored for gas. And so their purchasing is going to start to evolve. It's not going to be as cutthroat, breakneck as, buy as it was over the summer. So we should see the price of gas begin to ease. The question is, how much gas will they start burning as the season starts? Is this going to be a cold winter? This past week, there were articles suggesting that a cold snap was coming through, kind of making everybody a little tense. Because if there's an early cold winter, they could, because it's just because you fill up the tanks doesn't mean you can get through winter. You need constant inflow to balance that out.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. We'll see how it works.
And somehow you think there's a connection between the price of fossil fuels and the price of residential solar?
Absolutely, because The largest price of electricity generation in the United States is gas. You know, our electricity is 40-ish% from gas. And so that gas sets the marginal electricity price for much of, if not all of the United States. And the marginal is like the base rate. So yes, gas is a significant contributor to the increase in electricity pricing in the US.
So you wrote a story here for PV Magazine, says government research suggests that residential solar prices increased by about 10 cents a watt in the second half of 2021 and are up 20 cents a watt in the first half of 2022. However, accounting for inflation, residential solar prices are flat or decreasing.
Yes.
So accounting for inflation, I mean,
Specifically compared against the price of electricity, you know?
yeah,
But yeah, and the number is up. Everybody's paying more. Hit escape or click anywhere else. The number is up. The price is up in the last 2 years. And there's a chart that shows it clearly. But the thing that it's competing against, the price of electricity, as you saw, is up more. So from an ROI standpoint, it's still working out all right. Yeah, this is a report you should appreciate because there's a lot of good commercial info on the state level. You can compare your projects to the national averages. If somebody ever says, hey, what's solar cost? Well,
yeah.
I mean, we're going to give you our price, but here's a document from the feds that show a bunch of weird pricing, a bunch of variables, what things cost.
Yeah, it's Lawrence Berkeley that's tracking this that you
Yes.
reference here, right? LBNL,
Yes.
Lawrence
Berkeley National Laboratory.
Yeah.
As part of the Department of Energy. So this is a report they put out every year. It's actually much longer. I focused on the residential part because I was interested in residential pricing. And this next little chart's kind of neat too. This is pricing changes on a state-by-state basis. And so it's much more complex when you look at the picture across the nation. More mature markets seem to have more pricing increases. Still up and coming markets seem to have a little less, but it's a little more complex than that. You know, there's a lot of dynamics that are probably not properly grabbed. You know, state incentives, state price of electricity. You know, Massachusetts and Rhode Island, we have requirements for high ratios of electricians on rooftops. So that drives the price of labor up a little bit. You know, lots of little nuances. The report said specifically, nationwide costs would have been up if it wasn't for California. And California drives national pricing because it's still a large group. But, you know, this is a cool chart. This shows the variables on individual projects of what drive prices up or down relative from the average. And so if you get a premium module, price is up. If you get a microinverter, price is up. Optimizer, ground mounting, it's up. A battery, it's up a whole bunch, almost $2 a watt, $1.90. If it's new construction, it's cheaper. New construction solar is like 30 cents cheaper, which I thought it would be more so. But then if you look at the last one, the fixed effects, the state, there's such a huge variance, $1.50 a watt that's built within variables that are state level. And that's pretty interesting that it's so wide for variance on a state level, above and below the average pricing.
Yeah, who was it I was talking to? Rondo Energy. We posted an interview with Rondo earlier this week. They make a heat battery, and you know their goal is to charge the heat battery with cheap wind and solar. And they estimate that the price of, this is commercial industrial scale, you know, 1 to 100 megawatts of solar or wind fueling this industrial heat battery. They estimate the price varies about 30% from state to state and region to region in the US for solar. So that is a lot. And it has to do with labor standards, you know, logistics, procurement, proximity to ports, taxes, maturity of the market, so many factors. But you know, one of the themes, I guess, for me about energy prices going up is that it makes solar pencil better.
Yep.
If you're paying more for electricity and more for gas, then you're incentivized to consider an electric HVAC system and install a solar array for your electricity needs. And of course, if you're going to electrify your home, then you're going to need an extra large solar array and a battery. But so it's, it is a double edge. It is hitting consumers in the pocketbook, especially low and middle income. And that's painful. We want to, we want to slow inflation. I know the Biden administration is raising, interest rates consistently to try to slow inflation, and eventually it'll work. It just hasn't. Still going up. Inflation is still a problem. So
Technically, it's not the Biden administration that does the inflation stuff. It's the Fed. Biden administration is technically separate from the Fed.
Good point.
Yeah. But still going up. Inflation's still going up. Well, in the last couple of months, inflation might have flatlined. And so we'll see, though. We'll see what the next, but I thought I saw inflation flatlining last month, and maybe the month before it rose only a tiny bit. So we could be near the end of inflation. But with OPEC cutting oil production by 2 million barrels a day,
right,
we might see the price go up. However, I've seen strong data that says 3 million barrels a day have been removed from the global demand market for transportation oil. So that's due to EVs, and that's maybe offsetting growth globally, but maybe it's digging into actual volume that's going to be necessary. And hey, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, OPEC is trying to make the price of oil go up. It's now in the 80s, $80 a barrel, and the U.S. wants the price of oil to go down so that gasoline is more affordable. So who knows? We got a story about Fluence.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to bringing Fluence on the show. We have dialogue now with Fluence about
Awesome.
booking an interview. My first question is, what is their technology? They call it the Fluence Cube. And I'll put the press release. I mean, it's a big deal, this press release, I think, but do you understand their core technology? Because I don't.
Well, batteries aren't their core technology. It's the software and the management of batteries and the utilization of batteries on the power grid that I would argue is their core technology. They're probably battery agnostic. They have built this cube of theirs, and it probably uses cells from whomever they choose around the world. And this is just their battery hardware. But they're not even, I doubt greatly they're the battery manufacturer. I assume they're just the designers and they have someone else do all the assembly.
Yeah.
Though I did hear that they're doing some of the assembly, they're moving it to Oregon so they can qualify for some of the Built in America incentives. But the Fluence Cube is cool. I would love to be on a project with one of those one day. That's my second favorite battery tool. The Tesla power, not the power pack, the power wall, but the one that was in the middle. Yeah, but the one that was smaller than that, the small commercial one that they used to have, that was one that was closest to me using it.
Which I think they discontinued, didn't they?
Yeah, I believe so. So this project, though, this is a 250 megawatt hour battery whose purpose is to replace transmission line upgrades and increase the efficiency by which transmission lines can be used. And first off, the battery offers a lot of grid forming services, grid management services, so that, if voltages are up or down, or, I'm not great at this type of stuff, but if there's ever voltage lag, and literally the power lines lag, like come down lower, which is kind of weird. I don't understand how that works. Like there's a physical manifestation of low voltage on power lines, which is cool. But these units, they're there to keep the grid stable and to move energy around in non-busy periods at cheap cost, which is arbitrage, but to arbitrage both the energy and the power lines. So that's key. It's not just arbitraging the electricity price, buy high or buy low, sell high, but it's also arbitraging power lines so that you can more efficiently use them. So when the power lines are empty and they know based on prior data, and this is a Fluence specialty, is knowing, predicting what the grid's going to do, they say, okay, let's bring a bunch of electricity to this power plant at high noon when there's plenty of solar on the grid and when the power lines are locally empty. And then when the power lines get packed locally and we can't get in electricity into this region, boom, then we output both the energy, and it's a dual benefit. It's not only arbitraging, but it's arbitraging the power lines too, because sometimes the roads get too crowded to get the electricity into the tight, heavily populated, heavy energy regions. And so strategically deployed energy storage is known as wireless transmission.
I'm struggling to understand this, to be honest. I understand how a battery is a sponge. It can absorb energy or it can inject energy into the grid. Yep. But if you're at capacity, let's say you have a hot afternoon in the summer, the grid is at capacity. We're putting as much power on the grid as it can hold, so to speak. How does a battery facilitate or augment that local grid phenomenon?
So when we say the grid, we're speaking in a large manner. We're saying the grid. The grid covers California. But the reality is that it's just saying the highway system. The highway system is filled. Well, the big highway system might be filled. And so we can't get cars from southern LA to northern LA. But the local distribution lines might not be full, or the local transmission lines might not be full. And so while you might not be able to get the electricity from the solar power plant that's 100 miles away into the local tight region, you've already moved the electricity earlier when the grid wasn't packed. You put it in the batteries, you held it there because it's deployed in a local industrial region. And then instead of having to go back out to the big grid, you only have to go to the local grid. And so you can feed the local grid while all the other parts around it are maxed out. You can't get extra juice there because all that grid is being grabbed by other places on the way to you. So that's the timing aspect of it. The maximization of transmission is that you have to be able to predict, okay, today from 12 noon until 9 p.m., we are not going to be able to get extra electricity into downtown LA. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, let's use the battery that's downtown LA. Let's fill it up at 6 a.m. when the grid has space before it gets filled. And we'll just keep that electricity all day. And then at night, when it's like 3 times as expensive, bam, we have a local grid, a local power plant, in essence, that's not, fuming fossil fuels, because that's what they would do before, is that they would build a little gas power plant right down in the middle of downtown, whatever. And so you'd be driving by a building, driving by a house, driving by a supermarket, bam, gas power plant. It's like, oh, wonderful. And obviously it's not wonderful. It's the opposite of wonderful. But so this is a replacement of a downtown local gas power plant via being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And good story. I'm excited to learn more about Fluence. And
I think they're public too. So if you ever want to buy their stock, they're one of those stock companies.
Yeah, they're a Siemens and AES company.
Yep.
I see them in the news a lot, so they must be doing something right.
They have control of a large percentage of assets and batteries in Australia, because apparently that market was the first one that made sense for them, their technology, and apparently they're doing amazing. And that market, Australia, is very expensive for energy, and it's very advanced in terms of wind, solar, and storage. So Fluence cut their teeth there, and I think they built these software tools that are pretty awesome. Now they're selling into, into U.S. markets, European markets, as you can see. They're the real deal company.
Yeah, and there's another story on their website about fire testing that they achieved. Says, let's see, I want to get to the meat of it. Successfully completed a large-scale fire test for its 6th-generation energy storage products that surpassed the industry's UL 9540A safety testing requirements, designed to limit the spread of a fire in energy storage deployments. Results for the large-scale fire test were issued in a report by independent engineering firm DNV, who witnessed the tests as well as separate unit level UL's 9540A test. This issue of thermal runaway is a big one. While you and I were in California a few weeks ago, the Moss Landing project caught fire, and that's one of the biggest storage projects in the U.S. Big deal. I think that's a Tesla project, isn't it? The Moss Landing. And it just makes AHJs very nervous, and it makes them clamp down and be more restrictive. New York City is now famous for not allowing lithium technology in the city. And of course, it creates an opening for other technologies. There are non-lithium technologies that are vying for market share. Zinc is the one I see the most, but also flow batteries. And so it's just an issue that we have to take head on, and obviously Fluence is taking it seriously. I have a company called American Battery Factory coming on the show, and they're a lithium iron phosphate manufacturer making just cells, right? That's their bread and butter, is making lithium iron phosphate battery cells for other battery makers, but making them here in the United States. And and they're beating their chest about the thermal runaway safety of lithium iron phosphate, and it is a safer technology, but it's not without its anything with lithium in it is pretty much hazardous or at risk of thermal runaway, because lithium is so reactive.
So even phosphate batteries have a chance of catching on fire?
Lithium iron phosphate, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a much lesser chance.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was leaning toward them being like significantly lesser. I wonder what the
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen a good quantification of LFP versus nickel manganese, right? Or whatever the highest rated, you get better energy density with some of the other chemistries, which is why they're used so much in EVs. But LFP is coming to the EV world too. I mean, heck, isn't Tesla making LFP Model 3s in China?
I think so. That's
what I read.
I think in Europe, and I think even in the US, they're making LFP units now. I think most of their cars have moved toward LFP. Definitely all their stationary storage is LFP now. So there's definitely been a big evolution in Tesla vehicles.
Yeah.
So
well,
yeah,
you found a cool looking solar barn.
I like that. That's pretty neat. I like that.
Makes me want one.
Yeah. Those look like Solaria panels. They're just all black.
Yeah.
I don't know whose panels they are, but those are like super black panels. And,
yeah, Otter Energy, I gather they're a solar installer in Ontario, posted this story. They call it stealth solar, black on black, and it is. It blends right into the roof of that barn or whatever it is, carport. I don't know.
Detached garage is the way it's described.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, in Prince Edward County, that must be in Canada as well.
Yep, it's pretty neat. I like it. I like the look of it. It was just cool little fully covered structure with maximum modules. That's 15 kW of modules on that thing. That's a tiny little building with 15 kW. And being so far north, that south facing facade is probably doing pretty solidly.
Right.
So
yeah, having it at two angles is very good, right? One for summer, one for winter.
Yep.
So
this next one you're gonna like it, I think. This next
I haven't liked all the stories you found this week.
Well, this next one you're really gonna like.
The next one is in French, brother.
The language doesn't matter.
Okay. You're right. I am gonna like this. This is hilarious, actually.
Yes.
My goodness.
This is the newest ballasted system.
That's right. It's the latest in ballasted solar. Holy cow.
So
that is very innovative. Weighing down your solar panels with good old recycled bricks.
Yes. Now there's lots of shadow effects, so maybe they want to get some more engineered bricks there to hold it down. But I don't know if that'll meet code, but who cares? They're wired together, I'm sure, and doing their job just fine.
I wonder where this is. Is this in
let's see.
In the less developed world? It must be, huh?
Well, you can hit the C translation button, but I don't see any reference to any countries there.
Oh yeah, let's see what it translates as.
Part-time, flex, express yourself. Yeah, no location.
No.
So, good project though. I like it. Got it engineered. Got the job done.
Yeah.
I bet you the installation cost there, the labor on that price of that project is very, very low. I bet you they didn't strap in. Bet you they just kind of climbed up there a little recklessly.
Well, luckily it's a flat roof.
Yeah, true. Good point.
They might be in trouble if it was a sloped roof. But yeah, that's kind of how I have my Starlink mounted to the Clinton Lake Sailing Association roof right now. I just have it propped up there with a 2x4 sitting on it, hoping that we don't have a windstorm. Otherwise, my Starlink's going to go flying into the woods. It's been working really well, though. Everyone is really happy with the Starlink. I wasn't using it much, so I donated it temporarily to the sailing club. And we had a big regatta this last weekend, so a lot of people were geeking out on that.
That's cool.
Just another cash cow by Elon Musk. I don't know why he thinks Twitter is going to be a cash cow. Do you think Twitter's going to be a cash cow?
I don't know. Could be. I'm willing to pay them $5 a month so I can edit my tweets.
So you can edit your what? Oh, edit your tweets?
Yeah. If you pay them like $3 or $5 a month and get the next level up, one of the added features is tweet editing.
Right.
So it's not terrible.
Well, this is a first. You have a story from the IRS.
Yeah, it's not really. I mean, this isn't a story. This is just the page, so people can, But the what it is, it's at the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which had all the wonderful legislation that we got. There are some refinements, and there are some definitions, and there are some answers that people have, and there are comments. And there's definitions for how this stuff's going to work. And so the IRS is asking for the industry to give some comments. And for the larger companies, they're definitely going to do it. They're definitely going to have lawyers attempt to shape the questions and answers so that they can get the questions and answers they want to make their project ROIs the best, or at least to get clarity, and so that we can just move forward and get to work. Because there are some items that people don't fully know. Like, for instance, what explicitly will be our domestic content requirements. Some people have been saying that modules based upon the rules of the American Recovery Act from way back when we crashed the economy in 2008-ish, it might be those standard rules for how we can define manufactured goods. Other questions I've heard about were the community solar, low-income community solar, as well how prevailing wage might be defined. So the purpose of this is that anybody who's listening, Do a Google search for IRS asks for comments on upcoming energy guidance, and you'll find their page and you can submit comments, and please make good comments for the whole of the industry so we get some clear legislation.
Yeah, I love it. Definitely dive into that opportunity to give feedback on all this new legislation related to electrification of transportation, cleaning the grid, reshoring manufacturing, etc. Many good components, but complex components in the IRA. It's a big bill.
Yep. 700 pages.
Yeah.
740-ish.
Well, let's wrap up the show with this graph about shipping container. The cost of sending a shipping container around the world or halfway around the world. What's the story, John?
So COVID costs for shipping containers got up over $12,000 to $15,000 per 40-foot container coming from Asia to the United States. And if you fill that up with 250 kW of modules, it's like 3 cents a watt. The increase in price from the 3,000 to 4,000 price. Now, if you look at this image that's in this wonderful tweet, you can see that collapse from 12,000 to 4,000. That $8,000 difference is where that 3 cents a watt number comes in. And that's going to have an effect on hardware, all the hardware, different hardware, at least modules. So if we're buying modules internationally still for a couple more years before the US manufacturing scales, this 3 cents will help us. It's going to affect other pricing too in the world, just other things in general. So this is another reason why inflation is going to start going down. That the cost of shipping is going down, and shipping has an effect on the items that are in the ship, of course.
And do we understand why it has collapsed so radically in the last year?
Well, I mean, part of the reason why it went up so radically is because there was a lot of money floating around that people weren't spending going out drinking beer. They were upgrading their houses. They were buying all kinds of stuff. And it led to a very strong uptick in demand. Then there were challenges with getting shipping containers off boats into the US, into other markets. As well, there was limited shipping containers going back west to Asia on these ships. So we had multiple demand and supply chain structure items that kind of fed in. I'm no expert on this. These are just a couple of the items I heard. And so now that the demand boom has slowed down, we're starting to see shipping container wait times getting in, getting distributed. We're starting to see shipping containers go back with a little more material in them. So, multiple 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4 dynamics kind of fed into heavier demand, slowing down of them moving, and then a lack of empty shipping containers also had an effect at a certain point. So multi-variables drove up that shipping cost.
Yeah, there was that real bottleneck for a time when all the ports in the US were all jammed up.
Yeah.
I gather
I remember seeing an image with just boats everywhere outside the Los Angeles port. I was like, wow, that's a mess. And this same chart, if we were to Google lumber pricing did the exact same chart, just went back to its original pre-COVID pricing. So if you're looking to build a house, wait 6 more months so that the expensive lumber can be filtered out, and then sign your contracts, because they'll get back to normal lumber price. A friend of mine just built a deck, front and back deck, and a whole bunch of siding, and he just finished it. And I was like, hey, look, the price of lumber's down. He goes, oh, that's wonderful. I was like, oh, sorry, I should have shut up. He goes, yeah. So, evolving pricing, inflation slowing down. 2 pieces of evidence showing that inflation is aggressively slowing, at least in lumber and transportation costs.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for all that great news, John. I want to encourage our listeners to find all of our content and subscribe to the show at cleanpowerhour.com. Just hit the YouTube icon there, subscribe on YouTube, and give us a rating and review on your favorite audio platform, whether that's Spotify or Apple or Google, and reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. Give us your ideas for guests and technologies to bring on the show. And with that, how can our listeners find you, John?
Commercialsolarguy.com. That's my website. We got a contact us page. We just started doing some updates to clean it up because we're going to start being a sales team a little more. But commercialsolarguy.com is my website. Contact us page. Also on Twitter, Solar and Mass. And then John Fitzgerald Weaver on LinkedIn. What about you, Tim?
Same. LinkedIn is a great way to reach me, or Twitter, TG Montague on Twitter. With that, I want to thank all of our listeners, and let's grow solar and storage. Take care, John.